is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
Fork Union opened up in 2021. I jumped all over that. I really was looking to do something different. I had already rebuilt programs at Glenville and West Virginia Tech. I didn't really want a small college rebuild again. I either wanted to be a Division I assistant or Division I advisor. So when Fork Union opened up, I said, wow, that's something I think I would like, something different.
Bob Williams is the head coach of Fork Union Military Academy's postgraduate boys basketball program. Under Williams' leadership, Fork Union has achieved an impressive 102-44 record over 4 seasons. Williams brought 24 years of collegiate head coaching experience to Fork Union, including a successful tenure at West Virginia Tech University from 2002 to 2019. At West Virginia Tech, he led the Golden Bears to the NAIA National Tournament in 2015, 2017, 2018, and 2019. Williams' accomplishments at West Virginia Tech include being named Coach of the Year 3 times, recording his 403rd career win, producing 14 All-Americans, and securing 3 conference championships. Prior to West Virginia Tech, Williams was the head coach at Glenville State College from 1997 to 2002, and the head coach at Jefferson Community College from 1995 to 1997. Williams has also served as the associate head coach at Jefferson, an assistant coach at NCAA Division III Potsdam State, and as the head coach at Indian River High School in New York. His coaching journey began as a student assistant coach at Ithaca College. Hey, Hoopheads, this March only, you can buy one Dr. Dish CT Plus and get one for $2,000 during Dr. Dish Basketball's semi-annual sales event. You can also unlock exclusive discounts on the Dr. Dish Home and IC3 Shot Trainer. Shop now through March 31st to secure your industry-leading machines just in time for the off-season. Learn more at drdishbasketball.com and follow their incredible content at Dr. Dish B-Ball on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Mention the Hoopheads podcast and save an extra $300 on the Dr. Dish Rebel, All-Star, and CT models. Those are some great deals, Hoopheads. Get your Dr. Dish shooting machine today.
Hi, this is BJ Dunn, head men's basketball coach at Gettysburg College, and you're listening to the Hoopheads podcast.
Coaches, Game Changer is making your game film more valuable than ever. New this season to Game Changer, Film Room allows team staff to analyze full game videos, add comments to specific moments, and quickly share feedback with other coaches, team members, or families. The #1 youth sports app automatically skips downtime in the game film, condensing event video into active play so you can focus on the moments that matter. The best part? It's completely free for coaches. Download Game Changer now on iOS or Android and take your coaching to the next level with Film Room on Game Changer. Game Changer. Stream, score, connect. Grab your notebook and pen before you listen to this episode with Bob Williams, head coach of Fork Union Military Academy's postgraduate boys basketball program. Hello and welcome to the Hoopheads podcast. It's Mike Klimsing here without my co-host Jason Sunkel tonight, but I am pleased to be joined by Bob Williams, the head postgraduate coach at Fork Union Military Academy. Bob, welcome to the Hoopheads pod.
Thank you for having me on, Mike.
Excited to have you on. Looking forward to diving into all of the diverse things that you've been able to do in your career at various levels. Let's start by going back in time to when you were a kid. Tell me about your childhood growing up with the game of basketball. What made you fall in love with it?
Well, my father was a longtime basketball coach, college coach, junior college level and high school level in New York State, where I'm from, upstate New York. And so I became a gym rat, at a young age, and tag along, and was the ball boy for Jefferson Community College, where I later played and coached. And with my 2 brothers, and we had the number 1, 2, and 3 on our shirts for ball boy 1, 2, and 3. And we sat on the bench, and it was quite an education, really, to see. And back in those days, in the early 70s and late 70s, 80s, junior college basketball was really good in New York State, and one of the best areas in the country at the time. So I got a good, got to see a lot of good basketball, be around my father, who later went on to be a Hall of Fame coach in New York State, and learn the game. And just my father, he tells the story that when I was about 13, I was watching probably Notre Dame and UCLA play and game of the week and was recognizing what defenses were being played and stuff like that. So I think at a young age, I decided that's probably what was in my blood, and I wanted to go into coaching eventually.
Contrast for me the way that you grew up in the game as a player, and obviously with your dad being a coach had a big influence on you. But when you think about the way that the players that you coach today, how they grow up in the game, and just how the environment around basketball has changed from a youth grassroots, obviously a lot of pickup basketball back in the day when you and I are growing up versus the way that it is today. But just give me your thoughts and just compare and contrast how you grew up in the game versus how your guys that you're coaching today grow up in it.
Yeah, when you and I grew up, Mike, it was your parents sent you outside to play all day. If it was summertime, you went out in the morning. You probably played pickup baseball and then pickup basketball. If it was in the fall, maybe some football in the backyard, or you went down to the schoolyard and you played baseball or basketball. And so we would be out there all day until dinner time, and then after dinner, maybe go out back and turn the lights on to shoot outside or play 2-on-2 or whatever. And so, yeah, I played a crazy amount of pickup basketball growing up in high school and college. And I was fortunate enough to play 4 years of high school basketball and 3 years of college basketball. And but always was looking for a place. I was what that guy in our town, Watertown, New York, where I'm from, a small city of about 30,000. But I was the guy who called and arranged the pickup games and left voice messages for every player and said, "Hey, we're playing at 6:00 at Wiley tonight, or we're playing at 6:00 at the Salvation Army or at such and such school," and or outdoors courts, fairgrounds. And then you try to call 15 players and hoping that 10 would show up. And they usually did. And we had good runs, and it was great childhood and great memories. And, compared to now, my son just finished his college career, and I probably can count on one hand how many times he's played outside, pickup. Kids are afraid to play outside because they think they might get hurt nowadays, but it's a different world. Everything's changed, and everything's got to be organized. I don't think kids play a lot of pickup anymore where they organize it. It has to be organized for them on teams or summer leagues, or coaches got to bring them in and kind of make them do it. But it's definitely different nowadays. And I think kids, back when I was growing up, I played so much, probably too much. And I still worked on my ball handling and shooting on my own, but kids nowadays, they all have trainers and they work on their skill development constantly, or strength training, or, and those types of things. And we didn't have the trainers back then, or the strength training techniques that they have today. And so they have some advantages, but I think maybe they work on skill too much. And back then we probably played too much because we just enjoyed playing.
Yeah, that's a very good description of the way that the game has changed. I think certainly one of the things that I've talked to several coaches about is just the fact that when you look at, let's just say, the average high school team, and you think about the guy who was maybe the 10th or 11th man on your high school team, probably was a kid who maybe wasn't very skilled, maybe was a big football guy that just set some screens and banged people around. And now you look at the 10th or 11th kid on a lot of high school teams, and they're very, very, very skilled. And the shooting and the ball handling and those kinds of things that you develop by working with the trainer, I think, are off the charts in terms of that skill development. And yet at the same time, I think you talked about it in terms of playing a lot of pickup ball. I think that there was a higher, just in general, a basketball IQ, or maybe an understanding of some things, maybe the tricks of the trade that you or I developed by playing with guys who were older than us or bigger than us and pushed us around. And so I think there's positives to both. I always say that I'm glad I grew up in the era that I did. Not that I wouldn't have enjoyed the era of being able to go and play AAU and play in nice gyms and not have to be running up and down on the asphalt all day and putting the shoe goo on the bottom of my shoes to keep those things going so I can continue to play. But it's definitely a different atmosphere, certainly today for kids growing up in the game than it was back when you were playing and when I was growing up too. Tell me about the influence of your dad on you as a coach. When you think about growing up watching him and the way that he went about his business, what's one or two things that you still carry with you today that you feel like are a part of you as a coach that you got from him?
I think he was somewhat of a player's coach in that he believed in players and he gave them the green light, and he was more of an offensive coach. I'm probably more of a defensive guy myself in my career, but he was a very good bench coach, and I got a great seat watching him work the officials and communicate with the players and communicate in huddles and change defenses and change strategies. And back in those days, watching him coach, there was no shot clock or 3-point shot until later in his career. But so when I was a kid, there was no shot clock. So you would see sometimes they would go to 4-corner stall, and so you'd see these different types of strategies, especially back in those days. And so I think that, bench coaching, I think he was his strength, in-game adjustments and in-game coaching. And he coached for 27 years at Jefferson Community College, and the all-time wins leader there in the New York State Hall of Fame. And he coached 4 years before that in high school, and then he was a junior college All-American at Broome Community College, first team. Then he played at Lamar University in Texas, and so he had a great playing career and great coaching career as well. And so I learned that. I think, and he was a very good shooting coach. He always had good shooting teams, and they did a lot. They focused a lot on shooting in practice, and it carried over into the games. But he had some really good teams and good players over the years, combined from recruiting in New York State, downstate in New York City, Long Island, and then in the cities, Syracuse and Binghamton and Buffalo and Rochester and Albany and upstate New York. And it was a joy to be around. My father's still living and retired with my mom down in Florida. And so a lot of things rubbed off just from tagging along to the gym, and being in the gym all day Saturday and staying up late. And then when they had road games, running into knocking on his bedroom door to see if they won the night before, So that's kind of how I grew up. And I grew up in a snowtown area, Watertown, New York, and where a lot of my friends were on the ski slopes. But I was in the gym all the time and couldn't have been happier.
When you started your coaching career, how often did you talk to your dad to bounce things off of him?
I think he was more of a dad that encouraged me. We talked strategy a little bit, but not a ton. When I was a young coach, he retired in 1995, and then he was the athletic director, and so he hired me as his successor. So 95, 96, and 96, 97, it was the 2 years that I coached right after he coached 27 years. We had some success, and he so he got to see me coach that first year, and then the next year he moved to Florida and retired. And but I know he watches all the games. He still watches my games now here at Fork Union, and watches my son's games. And it's always tough when it's like I think it was harder for me when I watched my son's games or my dad's games. It was harder on me than my own games, and I think it's the same for my father. No stress when he was coaching, but when he was watching my team play, a lot of stress. And same when he came to see me play in high school and stuff. And it's funny how that works.
You want to have a little bit of control, right? When you're just sitting there in the stands and you're watching somebody else do it, no control over what's going to happen. And at least when you're coaching or when you were playing, you feel like you had some control over the outcome. When you're just sitting in the stands, just an observer during that time, for sure.
Absolutely. And you want your loved ones to do well.
When you went to school, were you thinking that because of your dad's experience at the college level that you knew you wanted to coach college basketball? Were you at all thinking ever about, hey, maybe I'm going to teach and coach at the high school level? Or maybe you weren't even thinking necessarily that coaching was going to be your main profession. Just what was your mindset as you entered college?
I knew I wanted to coach college basketball as I entered college, and I knew I had to get a degree, a bachelor's degree, to make that happen. I wasn't the most stellar student, and I had to work, especially at the maths and sciences, because I was in physical education. And so I had my ups and downs academically, and I wasn't the most mature student in college. I was more of a social guy, and didn't miss many social activities at Ithaca College, where I graduated from. But I knew I wanted to be a college basketball coach, and I actually played 2 years for my dad at Jefferson Community College, and then 1 year at Ithaca College, and then I became a student coach for my last 2 years at Ithaca College. So that kind of helped me get my first job was the head boys basketball coach at Indian River High School in northern New York State. And I did that for 2 years. And so that was my first job. And after that, we weren't very good. And I said, I need to be able to get to a place where I can recruit my players and pick my players. So I went to the college level. I went to Potsdam State College in upstate New York and worked for a Hall of Fame coach there in Jerry Welsh. And I stayed there for 4 years. And that was a great learning experience as well.
So tell me a little bit, let's go back to the student, the student coaching when you're at Ithaca those last 2 years. What does that look like for you going to school and being a part of the coaching staff? How integrated were you into what the staff was doing? Would you have considered yourself completely immersed in the coaching staff, or were you still kind of looked at as being a guy who was sort of on the side? Just what was that experience like for you in terms of how immersed you were, what you were able to see, what you were able to learn during those 2 years?
Yeah, Tom Baker was the head coach at Ithaca when I went to school there, and I learned a lot from him. He was very organized. His practices were very organized and detail-oriented. And I played 1 year, and I didn't get to play that much. I was like third-string point guard. So I decided I would go to coach and say, can I be a student coach in the program? Maybe I can help the program better that way, and then prepare me for my coaching career. And it ended up being a good decision. I was the varsity student assistant coach, and I didn't have a ton of input because they had a full-time assistant and 2 graduate assistants ahead of me. But it was still good to be around all of those good people that were very good coaches. And then it also helped coach the JV basketball team. So that really helped probably more than being the varsity student coach, because I got to be able to be on the court and teach and things like that. So it was all in all, it was a great experience, and it helped me for the next step.
What part of coaching do you feel like you took to the most naturally that came to you pretty easily? Whether you want to talk about just relationships with players, you want to talk about player development, you want to talk about X's and O's, you want to talk about something else. What did you feel like just clicked for you right away?
That's hard to pinpoint. But I would say I've always prided myself being a good professional coach, and as far as being able to communicate with people, recruits, coaches, whoever, administrators, decision makers, and everybody that you met along the way, wherever you're gone and wherever the basketball has allowed you to travel to, and can take you to amazing places and meet amazing people. But I think just maintaining professionalism is one thing that I've probably prided myself in, and treating people the right way. always treating everybody with respect. And it's probably just from being around good people and having great parents, that has allowed me to. And I think people, there's an old saying, people won't remember what you said to them, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And I think it's just kind of the way I've lived my life, a good Catholic boy from northern New York State and a good, Christian lifestyle.
Knowing that you wanted to coach at the college level, when you graduate and you get that job at Indian River, just tell me about the process of how that came to pass and what your impressions were of coaching at the high school level, maybe compared to what you thought. And obviously, you're a pretty young guy at that point as a head coach. So what do you remember about that experience?
Well, I vividly remember sitting in my apartment bedroom typing a letter to the principal at Indian River, and on an old typewriter in 1988, in the spring of 1988, and mailing that letter, applying for the vacant position of head boys basketball coach at Indian River High School. And the guy that I mailed the letter to turned out to be one of my great mentors, Steve Van Duzen. Steve was a longtime family friend and also a successful high school coach in that area. And then he moved into administration. He was the principal now at Indian River. And Steve tried to talk me out of the varsity job. He knew I wasn't ready. Of course, I'm 23. I thought I was ready for the job. And in no way, shape, or form really was I. But, you couldn't tell me that I couldn't be the head coach of the varsity team. And he tried to get me to take the JV job to start out with. I said no. So he ended up letting me be the varsity coach. And I replaced a very successful individual there. And there wasn't much left in the cupboard when he retired. And so needless to say, it was a little frustrating not winning. And, when you're 23 and you think you got everything figured out, and you got all the answers, and you can coach anybody under the table, and then you find out you're not as good as you thought because you're not winning, And, and it was, I would complain to my mom. I hate losing, Mom. And she would be like, Rob, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken, what.
All right.
And, but it's still, all in all, as I look back at it as a blessing. Everything was a blessing. And Hubie Brown, the great Hubie Brown, he said many times, I've heard him at coaches clinics, and he said, I hope you lose early in your career so you will learn how to win. And instead of getting spoiled and with winning early on, and there's something to be said for that. And it was 2 good years there of cutting my teeth and learning about life and basketball.
How does the opportunity then at Potsdam come to you?
And so when I left Indian River, I was looking to get to the college level, and I was looking around, and Potsdam State, the second assistant there, had just left and went to another school. And so I applied at Potsdam. Jerry Welsh was the head coach there at the time. Jerry had won 2 national championships in Division III at Potsdam, including an 85-86 team that went undefeated, I think 33-0. Their team was amazing. So he had great teams in 5 Final Fours. And so he brought me up. I interviewed, and I had been working. I know you worked camps, and I was working camps at that time too. In the summer, you're working as many weeks as you can. I was working at Villanova, worked Rolly Massimino's camps, and Jay Wright was the third assistant and was running the camps at the time. And I asked Jay if he would make a phone call to Jerry Welsh for me. And he brought me in his office, and he was nice enough to call and recommended me for that job. And because Jay, I don't know if he's from, he used to coach in Division III, started out Division III up in New York State, I think at University of Rochester maybe. And so Jay called, and I ended up interviewing and getting the job. And, it was one of those jobs that was $2,500, or maybe not even that, it was $2,000 a dorm room at age 25 and no meal plan. And you're expected to be in the office at 9 a.m. and don't be late. Right. And then head coach of the JV basketball team and varsity assistant. And Bill Mitchell was the top assistant then, and we had great staff. We probably had 4 or 5 assistant coaches and great facilities, 5,000 students at the school, maybe a little more. Good college town, Clarkson University was there also in the same town, and St. Lawrence University's down the road. And learned a ton of basketball from Jerry Welsh. Jerry's still living, and Jerry's in the New York State Hall of Fame also. And I didn't mention that I played for a great high school coach, Lou Kibling, at Watertown High School, and he's in the New York State Hall of Fame. Coach Kibling passed away a couple years ago, and Jerry Welsh is still living and retired in Raleigh, North Carolina. He went on to scout in the NBA. But after the first year at Potsdam State, Jerry was offered and took the Iona College job. And kind of a risk for him to take over a struggling MAC job like that, but he took it. And I remember him telling the story of the AD. Says, why would we take a chance on you, a Division III coach, to come here to Iona? And Jerry Welsh looked at him and said, I'm the one taking the chance here. I have a very strong program here. He's got 2 national titles and 5 Final Fours and countless All-Americans and pros. And so he really was the one taking a chance. And he went to Iona, and I stayed at Potsdam, and Bill Mitchell was elevated to head coach, and I stayed 3 more years and worked under Bill Mitchell there and became the top assistant and the recruiting coordinator. And so in Division III, the thing about Division III is you're recruiting every single day. We had a sign in our office from the Long Island Profile Recruiting Service that said recruit daily or perish. And it's pretty accurate because that's why Division IIIs, they get good players. They recruit all year round, whereas Division IIs will wait. So kind of right now, this time of year, and Division I's now with roster management, they have to go year round too. But so it was a great experience just from learning how to recruit and going on the road for days and weeks at a time around New York State. And it was a great experience. Then coached the JV team for 2 years. So while I was learning how to be a recruiter, I also was able to hone my skills as a head coach for 2 years.
I think those reps, right, as a head coach are really valuable. And sometimes I know that from my own experience, when I was the varsity assistant coach, that there was 1 year out of the stretch of whatever, 13 or 14 years that I was the assistant varsity coach, where I coached the JV team because our JV coach had taken another position. And I was completely rusty at making in-game decisions. You talked about how one of the strengths of your dad was being a great in-game coach. And I know that year I was not a great in-game coach. And it definitely took me a little while to be able to sort of remember that, hey, I got to be the guy that makes the decision about when to call a timeout, or I've got to be the guy that makes the decision about who's subbing in the game, or I've got to make a decision about, are we going to change what we're doing here in reaction to what our opponent's trying to do? And I think sometimes when you're an assistant and you don't ever really get those opportunities to make those decisions, those skills can get rusty pretty fast. And I definitely found that for myself, that even though I was coaching, I was in it every single day as an assistant, it's completely different once you sort of slide over, and everybody knows that, right? But when you're even talking about just taking over, in your case, a college JV program, or for me, taking over a high school JV program for a year, yeah, you get those reps that I think ultimately become much more valuable as you move on in your career.
Yeah, and just moving one seat over to the hot seat can mean all the difference. And we've seen over the years many coaches that have, at the college level or even high school too, where a coach just sat next to a great coach for years, and then when they get their chance, they haven't been as successful. But I'm not saying everybody, but that has happened. And now talking about honing your skills, so one of the ways I think really benefited me to become a head coach was working basketball camps. And so you're teaching in stations, in an intense environment. You're working with kids and trying to teach them the fundamentals of whether it's blocking out or how to V-cut and get open and getting triple thread, or how to defend a screen or shell drill. And then coaching a team and while you're 21, 22, 23, 25 years old or whatever. And so I think that's a great way, just in camps where coaches can hone their skills, and without even being a head coach, maybe you're getting that head coaching type of experience of teaching and coaching a team.
What was your favorite camp you worked at?
I enjoyed Villanova. I think I worked like 3 weeks each summer, and in between the weeks, we would, some of us coaching buddies, we would go rent a house down at the Jersey Shore, or something like that. And so that was probably the most fun I've had. And Rolly used to, every night Massimino he had hundreds of coaches, big camps. These were back in the days where individual camps were huge. And so every night he would take care of the coaches, and he would have a keg of beer, and then he'd bring in, tons of pizzas. And then whoever was speaking the next day, say it was Chuck Daly, was speaking to the camp the next day, he would come in the night before, spend time with Rolly, and then and speak to the coaches, in a coaches type clinic setting. That was really neat. And also Rolly Massimino, he didn't use Villanova's food. He brought his own food service in. So they brought their own truck in, and they had lobster and steak and for the campers. I mean, it was amazing. And it was really good. So there was some fringe benefits there. And but that was always fun. And one of my favorite camps, though, is the 5-star camp. I didn't work the camp. I had a couple assistant coaches of mine work the camp, but I'd love to go to Honesdale in New York, or in Pennsylvania, Honesdale, and the outdoor cabins and outdoor courts, and watch people like Rasheed Wallace and those guys play, and then or go to Pittsburgh and see Pitt 3 at 5-star, which was a big time week. And those were fun to go recruit at, and then socialize, meet people, and network, and so I enjoyed those camps for sure.
Funny when I think back to the top of our conversation, right, about just the different way that players grow up in the game today versus the way that players grew up in the game when you and I were kids. And to me, there's no better example of that than 5-star, right? You show up at either one of those locations. I went when I was a player. I was lucky enough to go 1 year to Robert Morris, and you show up and you're playing on converted tennis courts. It's 95 degrees. There's no air conditioning in the dorms. You're sitting there after lunch and you're listening to whoever the clinician that comes in to give the speech. And the week I was there, the guy who was the player, the big name, the week I was there was Billy Owens. And so Billy Owens is in the cafeteria, and he's helping to serve and all those different things to be able to get his camp tuition paid for, or whatever the deal was back in the day that Garth had going with all the main guys. And you just think about the way that a player today who is a top 5, top 10 player in the country, if you were to try to really explain to them or just drop them back in 1986 and say, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to show up and you're going to play on these converted tennis courts outside in the sun. It's 95 degrees, and you're going to have to pour milk and clean the tables and do all this stuff. And these guys would be looking at you like you have like 7 heads. But it was just, as you said, it was a different era. And yeah, the week that I was there as a player was probably one of my favorite weeks of camp, and just as an experience to be there with so many great players, but also just great coaches that were there working with you in all those different ways. Yeah, 5-star was a totally different animal than anything that we see today. That's for sure.
And Station 13, and that's awesome. Though you must have been a pretty good player, Mike, to be at 5-star with Billy Owens and all those guys. I grew up a Syracuse fan. Everybody from my hometown were an hour outside of Syracuse, so everybody was huge Syracuse fans. And Syracuse, of course, had an amazing program back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And Billy Owens, of course, I believe from Carlisle, Pennsylvania, right?
Yep.
He was a great player. Yep. That's a great story, though, that he had to work his fees off.
And I remember Garth during one of the times when the whole camp was together. at that time, he always called him the Baryshnikov of basketball. So he's like Billy Owens, Carlisle, Pennsylvania, the Baryshnikov of basketball. And I'll just never forget that him saying that and just walking around. And that was a time where the guy used to read the Blue Ribbon college basketball yearbook that had all the whatever top 50 or top 75 high school players. So like I knew all those guys, not knew them, but you knew their picture, knew their stats, knew where they were from. I'm like, oh man, like there's Billy Owens right there. And I've been looking at his picture for the last 2 or 3 years as, this guy. So it was definitely an experience to be able to be a part of that. So, all right, jumping back to your career, you get an opportunity at 3 different spots to be a head collegiate coach. And as you go through those varying experiences, obviously you spent the longest time at West Virginia University Tech, but you were also at Glenville and you were also, as you said, at Jefferson, where your dad had coached. So tell me a little bit about those experiences. I don't know, we could just go chronologically, but start with Jefferson and kind of what you learned being a head coach at the college level for the first time.
Yeah, I was young in my 20s at Jefferson, and I felt like I was ready, and we were able to. I really recruited hard out of New York City and Long Island, and brought some good, talented players to Jefferson, which is not easy to do because it's 5.5 hours from New York City, and up in the middle of nowhere for those kids. And but we had 2 really good teams. We went to Final Four both years in junior college Division III, and had a couple All-Americans, and went to won the regional state championship the second year. Went to the nationals both years, and national championship game in '97. Lost a heartbreaker in the waning seconds, and that ate at me for several years. Losing that game, in 1997, we were down to Eastfield, Texas, Eastfield College out of Texas. They had a good team, and we kind of made a run, and we really shouldn't have gone as far as we did on paper, but we did. It wasn't nearly as talented. Well, it was a good team, but it wasn't as deep and talented as the year before. But anyways, everything just clicked, and we won the regional state championship, and then made a run to the finals. And we were down, I want to say 16 with 8 minutes to go. Made a big run back. The game was in New York State, so we had a big crowd there. And then we lost, and it was tied with a minute to go. And then I think they scored the last 4 points of the game to win. And that was heartbreaking. Just walking into the locker room after the game and seeing 18, 19-year-old kids weeping the way they were weeping. I've never seen athletes weep that openly loud before, where they were wailing, in so much pain from that loss. And that, man, I couldn't sleep, I don't think, for 3 days after that. It hurt so bad. And then, and then it just took a while to get over that. And it probably took me several years to get over that. But now I look back at it, it's fine. It's all a blessing. But that took some time as a young coach, and then to get that close to a national title and then come up short. But so then after that year, I started looking around, and I had interviewed for so I had, when I was at Potsdam and Jefferson, I was interviewing for some D1 assistant jobs, and then and all other jobs too, D3 head coaching jobs and what have you. And then so I was threw my name in, just based on success. I only knew one person in West Virginia, and it was a kid that played on our team at Jefferson, and I didn't know anybody else from West Virginia. And I applied at Glenville State, and I was the last one of 5 to interview. It was on a Friday in August of '97, and as soon as I got back to the hotel in Glenville, they called me up and offered me the job even before I left town. And I the following Monday, I had a Division I interview at Fairleigh Dickinson scheduled, and which was a lower paying job just outside of New York. And so I don't know if I could afford to do that. So I told Glenville yes, and I canceled the interview with Fairleigh Dickinson for Monday. And Glenville was impressed with the team, they were based, that was just based on we had success at Jefferson. And then, they wanted to know if I could bring some players with me. So I did. I brought 2 players with me. And one was a first team All-American, and both of them ended up being starters for us at Glenville. And Glenville was a rebuilding situation. Both Glenville and West Virginia Tech were down when I took those programs. Glenville was in last place, I think, or second to last place in a 15-team NCAA D2 conference, and in a very remote area of West Virginia, 20 miles off the beaten path through winding roads. Wonderful community. I really enjoyed my 5 years at Glenville State, rebuilding that program. First year, I think we were 7-20, and it was just so rewarding, and we overachieved. And then we started knocking off some of the top teams. And then the last 2 years I was at Glenville, we won more games than anybody in the conference. Now, this tells you how good that league was, the West Virginia Conference back then. They've since changed the name to the Mountain East Conference. But the West Virginia Conference in 97, 98 had 5 teams ranked in the top 25 in one poll. So that in one Division II poll. So you knew that was a really good league. And fun league to coach in. Great coaches, great players, and great communities, small colleges. And but Glenville was a small town, and really good football there. And now since they've expanded a little bit, they got a nice big arena now. But we had a small gym back then. It was a home court advantage, and the gym was packed, and the community loved the team. The community was terrific, and they supported the team, and they still do. And it was a great experience. My 5 years there, made a lot of friends at Glenville, and then a lot of coaching friends along the way, and players, that became lifelong friends that played for us there.
High school and middle school basketball program directors, listen closely. Coaches are expected to do far more than just coach. You know this. It doesn't matter if you're doing the coaching yourself or you have a full staff of coaches with you. You know very well that coaches handle scheduling, academic issues, parent communication, leadership development, and even mental health concerns for athletes. A lot to deal with. And when coaches are stretched too thin, it impacts the development of athletes, team morale, and the overall success of the program. There are several ways to prevent you or your coaches from feeling overwhelmed. However, I'll tell you one of our favorite ways to keep coaches firing on all cylinders, and that's athlete-driven accountability and organization. Instead of coaches constantly reminding players about assignments, grades, and practice schedules, the programs at Playmaker Planner put the responsibility back on the athletes. By tracking their own academics, goals, and commitments, student athletes become more self-sufficient, which of course allows the coach to focus on what they love doing most, coaching. Let's find out if the programs from Playmaker Planner can be a complement to what you're already doing. Visit playmakerplanner.com/stop is this for you to find out more.
What's the adjustment like when you go from one geographical area to another when you've been recruiting primarily in one area? So you spent a lot of your career in New York. Now all of a sudden, as you said, you only know one person in West Virginia. You show up, and again, at that time, a lot of your relationships had to be with high school coaches and getting to know people so that they would clue you in as to, hey, here's some guys that you should be looking at. What was that process like for you as you transitioned just in terms of the recruiting and building those relationships that you need in order to be a good recruiter?
That's a great question, Mike, because a lot of people get passed up on jobs because they don't have recruiting experience in certain geographic areas. So really, I only knew New York State, when I went to, and all of a sudden I'm in a D2 league in West Virginia. So I always prided myself in recruiting local, and we started recruiting some local kids, and then we recruited good local players in West Virginia, and which brought more fans and more media attention to the team. And but I had to quickly learn the state of West Virginia, and then I ended up living in West Virginia for 24 years, 26 years before I moved here, but coached for 24 years and raised my family there, and it's really home now. And but we had to learn not just West Virginia, but you had to try to get into the Cincinnati area and Columbus and Cleveland and DC and Baltimore, and then recruit nationally too, because you're going to look at junior colleges, players from around the country. You're going to the national tournament in Illinois and Kansas and different places. So and then utilizing contacts that you've already had throughout the years.
What attracted you to the job at West Virginia Tech?
Well, West Virginia Tech was, and we kind of beat up on West Virginia Tech, but when I left Glenville, I knew West Virginia Tech, I could have success there just because I already knew the conference. They were in the West Virginia Conference at the time, and it ended up being a great move. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just go there for a few years, and then I ended up staying 17 years. It's funny how things work out, but especially when you start raising children, it's harder to move around once your kids are starting to grow up. But West Virginia Tech had a great basketball tradition, maybe better than Glenville, tradition wise. And West Virginia Tech, Sidell Threet was the all-time leading scorer there. Sidell Threet played in the NBA for 12 seasons. You probably remember him. He replaced Magic Johnson. Yeah.
I played against Sidell Threet a couple times up here.
Oh, wow.
Up here in Cleveland, and some pickup games around.
Nice.
Back when that used to be a thing, like we talked about. But yeah,
that's great. So you played against a lot of good players, but Sidell was a quick, athletic guard, scoring guard, and Sidell once, not to get off on a tangent, but Sidell Threet once scored 55 points against the Knicks in the Garden, and he was just one of many, many really good players in the West Virginia Conference over the years, and that was when they were NAIA, and then later went to D2. But so a lot of great players have gone to a lot of those small colleges in West Virginia, and one of the coaches there before me, Tom Sutherland, was a great coach at West Virginia Tech. He had a pipeline going from Atlanta, but we had to put our own niche, Coach Neil Bicey, the building I coached in, Coach Neil Bicey was a legendary coach and did clinics with Rupp and Auerbach and those guys. And he wrote a book on Full Court Zone Press, and it was one of the first college team to average 100 points a game in 3 straight years. But he was also one of those, some years he would slow it down and run 4 corners. And but what a great coach he was, and great man. But I was fortunate to try to rebuild that program. We were able to do it. It took a few years to do that. West Virginia Tech was having some troubles with administration and changing conferences, going through a number of presidents, athletic directors, football coaches. And I kind of outlasted a lot of people, and I stayed there. And then finally we went from changed affiliations. We left the West Virginia Conference, went back to the NAIA. Then we were NAIA Division I for a while, and we were in a Kentucky league. And then NAIA Division II, independent. And now NAIA has gone back to one division. But the West Virginia Tech, and also the school moved from Montgomery, West Virginia, where I coached for 15 years, to Beckley, West Virginia, where it's located now. Not many colleges move locations. They move 45 minutes to a bigger city, and I did coach in Beckley, WVU Tech in Beckley, for the last 2 years I was there. I enjoyed both places, and coached a lot of great players, turned the program around, and won a few championships, went to national tournaments 4 out of the last 5 years we were there. Switched from a man-to-man rotational system in 2014 to pack line defense. And so right after that, the story goes, Mike, we were 2 years in a row, we were very close to getting to Kansas City to the NAIA Nationals, and we lost 2 heartbreaking games in regional finals. And so I started looking around, what can we do differently to put our program over the hump? And so we looked around. One thing we looked at was the pack line. And we were 20 years, we were a rotational man-to-man system. And so I went down and visited with Tony Bennett and his staff, and we watched them practice one day. And lo and behold, the father of the pack line just happened to walk in with golf clubs off the golf course. Tony's dad, Dick Bennett, who gets credit for inventing the pack line. And we met him and talked to him, and they shared things with us, and they shared video clips. They were nice enough to do that. And then we talked to people like Jim Boone, who's one of the best pack line people now, teachers of the pack line, and different people around the country. And we studied it all summer. And then we implemented it, and we got better at it as we went along, and we enjoyed teaching the pack line. And your team defense usually gets better throughout the season, and it helped us maybe win close games. I don't know. Maybe we had better talent. That's how we got to 4 national tournaments the next 5 years. Or was it the pack line? Or both, So
probably a combination.
Yeah. But that was our pack line story. And then when I came to Fork Union, of course, I brought the pack line with me because I liked the pack line. So I brought that for me.
So here's a question for you. So when you change from something that you've done and obviously felt comfortable with and obviously taught for a long time, right? You're teaching rotational man-to-man. You've done that. You know what you want to do. You know how you want to teach it. You know the drills that you want to use for that. How long does it take you? Obviously, you go down and you're watching camp and you're learning from the Bennetts and you're watching film and all those kinds of things. How long does it take before you feel you have the grasp on it that you need to be able to teach it to the same degree of detail that you had previously with your other system? How long does it take you to feel comfortable? What's the process for making sure you feel comfortable teaching? It's one thing to say, hey, I like this, I want to be able to do it. It's another thing to be able to take that out onto the floor and actually teach your players what they need to know in order to be able to execute it. So what was that process like?
Well, studying it all off season and then implementing it when practice started. And my assistant coaches were involved in that too. So they were studying also and talking to people as well as I was talking to people and learning it. And then, there's the ultimate pack line guide. I don't know how many pages it is, 50 to 100 pages of notes and clinics and on pack line and people that have taught it. And I think pack line people over the years don't really like to tell people that it's really successful for them. They kind of kept that a secret. And there's a lot of people that say they're pack line. That just means they're in the gaps. I don't know if they're really committed, but we really committed 100% to the pack line and all the exact principles of the way it was taught by Dick Bennett. And, we've had to tweak some things. We've tweaked a little, like ball coverage things that we kind of prefer that really work with the pack line people. But we are true pack line, and we're proud of it. And it's really helped us. For example, this year we held our opponents to 38% from the floor. And it's hard to, in our philosophy is we want to build a wall around the paint, keep you out of the paint. And we want to force you into contested jump shots, as many as possible. So if we're playing a 40-minute game, we may force a team into 10 more threes than they normally take. They might make a few more, but over the course of 40 minutes, their percentage usually isn't that high. I think we held people to 28% from three this year, I believe. And so which is good. And it's been good for us. It's been good to us. But that first year, it took a while because it was new, so we, after the first year, it became easier to teach. But in the, at the beginning, we kind of we had to make sure we were using the right terminology and teaching the right things. As the season went on, we got better at it, and then our team got better at it. And that first year, we broke through and got to the national tournament in Kansas City. And we had an experienced team too, and a good team. And but that helped us. It helps us win close games. They say pack line helps you win games on the road, and you're building that wall around the paint because people aren't getting in the paint as much. You're forcing the next pass on the perimeter. You got to be great in the gaps. We constantly preach, do your job in the gaps. Force the next pass. Everything's a closeout. Great closeouts. Don't overrun the closeouts. Keep everything in front of you. And because we're keeping the ball on the perimeter more, the ball doesn't come in the paint as much, so therefore we don't foul as much. I mean, there was countless games this year where we still had, fouls to give at the end of the game, or the end of the half, just because we don't foul as much. And if you don't foul as much, they don't go to the free throw line as much. So you're trying to take away layups and free throws. We might give up a few more threes. We always tell our team we can persevere those things. A lot of college coaches are so scared to death to give up a 3-point shot that they just try to run people off the three. Because they're running them off, now all of a sudden they're in scramble mode and they're going 5 against 4 and people are getting layups or there's fouls. And so we just are complete opposite. We just, we want to contest threes and not give up rhythm threes, and keep people on the perimeter as much as we can. And then, you're forcing long shots. They're going to equate to long rebounds, and you've got to go get those.
There's so many things. It's amazing how whatever strategic decision you make, whether it's something defensively like the pack line or just how you decide to design your offense. And then I love that detail that you just mentioned, right? Where, okay, so we're forcing teams to take more long jump shots. Well, that's going to create more opportunities for long rebounds. Then we have to talk to our team and teach them, well, okay, what does that look like? How might that be different if we're allowing teams to get into the paint and get shots where the rebounds maybe not coming off as far? And so there's all these just subtle details, right, that play off of one decision, and then there's more things that sort of pile onto that you have to be able to then teach your team. And as you said, as you get into that more and you go through a season with it, you get a handle on, hey, what are the auxiliary things that then go along with this? And we're doing the main things right. Then what are the secondary little things that we need to do in order to be able to really maximize, whether it's the pack line or whatever other strategy that you might want to employ? I think the beauty of basketball is in that major decision then sort of has a trickle-down effect of what are the next things, what are the small fundamentals, what are the small details that we have to teach in order to really maximize what it is that we're trying to do. And I'm sure that's what you found over the course of your career.
Yeah, and I'm not saying pack lines is the best thing to do, and it's got to be something that you believe in. And you, as a coach, you got to do what you feel is best for your program and what's best for you, suited for you, and how you like to play. And there's a lot of different ways to get to success. Whether it's pressing, matchup zone, traditional man, denial man. People don't see people denying as much as they used to, but there's still teams that do it. And then, or pack line. There's a lot of different ways defensively, and then there's a lot of different ways offensively as well.
How much did you know about Fork Union before you went there?
I knew a lot about Fork Union because when I was at West Virginia Tech in Glenville, I tried to recruit Fork Union players. And the great Fletcher Arrett was the coach at Fork Union Military Academy for almost 50 years. And Coach Arrett became a friend of mine, and he was friends with every college coach. And he was from West Virginia, and West Virginia Tech was located in Fayette County, and that's where Fletcher Arrett was from, Fayette County. And he brought a lot of West Virginia boys down to Fork Union, Virginia over the years, and sent them to places like, West Virginia and Marshall, and a lot of great players throughout the years from West Virginia that went to Fork Union because of Fletcher Arrett. So I always admired Fletcher Arrett and talked to him a lot on the phone. He would call me up and say, "Bob, it's Fletch down at Fork Union." And we'd talk about players, and he's telling me about players, and great man to know. I'm still good friends with his brother, John Arrett, and Fletcher's, his nephew, Frank Arrett is our post-grad football coach here. And Frank is from Fayetteville, West Virginia. So there's a lot of West Virginia ties too. And there's more than that. There's a lot of West Virginia ties to Fork Union. Now, I kind of surprisingly semi-retired in 2019. Our last West Virginia Tech team was 30-5, and we had 2 All-Americans on the team. We were ranked number 3 in the nation in the NAIA, and we went to the Nationals. We got upset in the Sweet 16. A local team out there. We were out in South Dakota, and a team one of the neighboring states hit, or Iowa, hit 23s on our pack line defense, and just got caught on fire. Where it didn't matter how deep they were, you had a hand in their face. It was going in one of those nights, and then the next year, the NAIA was we were Division II NAIA, and the NAIA was going back to one division, and I was like, oh, this might be the last chance I had a legitimate national title at West Virginia Tech. And I was going through a divorce at the time, and I just just thinking about life in general. I had been there for 17 years, and the school just moved 2 years earlier, and I was commuting from Charleston, West Virginia, over an hour each day, and I just said, I think I'm gonna retire from Tech. And people were very surprised, and my family tried to talk me out of it, and the athletic director, Kenny Howell, did as well. And great people at West Virginia Tech, but I'm indebted to them, and I loved coaching there, every minute of it. We had a lot of success and made a lot of friends, and it coached a lot of great players, and had a lot of assistant coaches that were great there, and a lot of them are moved on and to Division I ranks now. And it's amazing, once you get older, then you start getting coaches in your family tree, your coaching tree, that move on and make you proud, and you follow them. And as we're taping this tonight, I had one eye on the Navy basketball game, against the championship game against American tonight. And Jaron Marino played for me at West Virginia Tech, and he's an assistant coach at Navy now. He's like a son to me, and very close with him. And when he comes to me with and asks me for advice on things, and some of your former players that go into coaching, they'll do that, or your former assistants. And he's got a great career, and he was a 3-year starter, and started out as a walk-on at West Virginia Tech, and ended up scoring 1,000 points. Was 2-year captain, and led us to our first NAIA National Tournament. And he was an engineer at West Virginia Tech, and then his last year when he graduated, he decided to help us as a student assistant, and he just fell in love with the game and said, "The heck with engineering, I'm going into coaching." And he's been at Radford and Lewisburg College and Navy, and has done a great job. And he's got a real good future, and will probably be a future Division I head coach. And so people like that, you start, as you get older, you start mentoring others. And I didn't really see that coming. You never thought about when you were younger starting out that eventually you're going to be a mentor of people. And I was blessed to have great mentors that were coaches in my career, and helped shape my philosophies, and people I could lean on for advice. And so I got out of the game in 2019, and I said, well, maybe I'll do something different. Maybe I'll go into athletic administration. I'll take a little time off. But in 2019 was, we called it the summer of Bob. And the summer of Bob was just traveling around, hanging out with friends, and being happy-go-lucky, not worrying about the next season. It was really different, and not having a team, and I enjoyed it. And then as time went on, so I started to miss it. Once basketball season came, I was like, wow, I don't have a team. This is weird. And so I started to miss it. And I said, well, I got 2 kids, one in high school, one in college. I got to really go back to work. So, I was about to go back to work, and then working for the state parks in West Virginia. And then COVID hit, So that job, I never even worked a day, because COVID hit right when I was about to work for the state park system. And then so I ended up being 2 years out from basketball. And that's when I had interviewed at Ithaca for the head coaching, or I was involved with the Ithaca job, and then interviewed for a couple other jobs. And, and now I'm in my 50s, and not as appealing as a coach to probably some administrations of small colleges. So anyways, when Fork Union opened up in 2021, I jumped all over that. I said that because I really was looking to do something different. I had already rebuilt programs at Glenville and West Virginia Tech, and I didn't really want a small college rebuild again. I either wanted to be a Division I assistant, a Division I advisor, or in all those 2 years I was out, I still trained kids on the side. So I stayed fresh, teaching and training kids, and then going to games. And my son was at Marshall one of those years as a walk-on, so I would go over and watch Marshall practice and play and go to different games. And anyways, so when Fork Union opened up, I said, wow, that's something I think I would like, something different, where you have this one team for a year, and you have to recruit, and you have scholarships, and you have to place them. And so I said, well, I could utilize my contacts in college coaching to help these kids, and I really fell in love with it. And I've just finished my 4th season at Fork Union, and I was blessed to come here, and thank the good Lord for sending me to Fork Union, and being able to get back into coaching again, which I love, and it kind of rejuvenated me. And it took, after 2 years off of having a team, I was a little rusty. It was, coaching at first, and I would forget some terminology, and then now I got it all back down. But and I've enjoyed it. I love the player development side of basketball, so it was a good fit for me, where we really push our guys hard in the weight room, and then we try to teach them how to play the right way, playing off 2 feet, and we try to play as a team, and we try to look like a college team. We run our program, our practices the same way we ran them at West Virginia Tech, and a lot of the same drills. We brought the pack line with us. That's helped us be successful. In our first year at Fork Union, we won 27 games, and we were ranked as high as number 3 in the country, and went to the Nationals, and beat some really good teams like Brewster Academy and IMG and Hargrave and St. Thomas More, and had some great wins that first year, and Word of God. And then now it put me in a different circle of people, meeting different coaches. And I had to learn, how does this prep school thing work, and how does the recruiting work, and how does it work with promoting players and all that. And so I've had to get better at that after the first year. And then we've had some players. Right now we have 13 players. Fork Union has 13 players in Division I right now, rosters. And we've the last 2 years, the last 2 seasons, we put 8 guys in Division I, and then countless in Division II and III and NAIA and junior college. And it's been very rewarding. Fork Union has a great tradition. Fletcher Eric, he coached guys that went to Kentucky and North Carolina, and great play Florida and Virginia Tech, and just great players, back in the 90s and early 2000s. And it's a little harder for us to get that caliber of player now, because there's so many just Christian schools popped up, and so many basketball academies everywhere. And plus everybody's qualified they don't have to have the test score now. But we're still getting very good players. We get kids here that I couldn't have got at West Virginia Tech, freshmen, this good. And then Fork Union's tradition is unbelievable. Over 400 to Division I, and 13 have gone on to the NBA, and from our program over the years. And even more impressive in football, 130 to the NFL, and 2 Heisman Trophy winners went to school here. And Kevin Plank, the founder of Under Armour, went to school here. And some Supreme Court justices' sons have gone here, and Secret Service, and President Bush's chief of staff son. And just it's an impressive place to be from. And Fork Union is highly respected.
What do you think is the key? Because obviously for you, being on the college head coach side of the recruiting process, you're looking at it in one way. Now, as the coach at Fork Union, you're on the other side of it, trying to help your players find the right fit for them at the college level. What's the most important part, or what's the key thing that you have to do in your role as the head coach at Fork Union to help your players to be able to get those opportunities at the next level?
Well, we do tell our players this, that even though they were all stars at their high schools, and so these are postgrads that we're coaching, guys that maybe aren't satisfied with their offers, or they need to get stronger for a year, or they for whatever reason they want to do a prep year to get more exposure in a different area, and so we really try to convince them that let's play team basketball. I know you're here really for an individual reason because you're trying to move on and showcase your skills to get to the next level, but college coaches don't ever call me up and say how many points a game is this guy averaging. They might call me up and say, what's his 3-point shooting percentage? Or how many rebounds is he getting? No one ever asks what's he scoring, because everybody at this level can play. So they're going to see that everybody can play, because colleges will come and watch us practice in September. Then they'll be following our team and our league, the Elite Prep League, which is an outstanding league in its third year. And so our guys are going to gain exposure, and just the name Fork Union helps our players gain exposure, but we try to convince them that the more you win, the more phone calls we're going to get. And it's factual. We've found that to be true, in that when our team is successful, so we struggled a little bit this year early on, and then started hitting our stride and played really well. We ended up winning 25 games this year. It was a decent season. We didn't get to the Nationals, but it's probably because we didn't play well in November up in New England. And but we got better, and we beat Perky Oman, who went to the Nationals, and we beat Hargrave, who went to the Nationals. We beat Massanutten, who went to the Nationals. And we beat some good teams in January and February, and really improved. And so that's nice to see players improve individually. I enjoy that, and it's nice. And obviously our team improved. And so when we were going through that stretch of winning some games in January and February, people started taking notice, college coaches, and the whole recruiting world is way different than it used to be, Mike. You know that, and
Absolutely.
so like Division IIs are just blowing me up right now, because they're just kind of starting out recruiting, and Division I's, of course, they have roster management now between now and the time their season starts, and so it seems like it's gone later and later. Like Fork Union's players have always got late offers. Traditionally, we had one Division I offer on our team in the fall. And then we thought, well, maybe 3 or 4 guys can get Division I in the end, and the rest can go D2 or 3. And it's gone even later, it seems like, this year, because and you're seeing it if you keep an eye on the internet, you see everybody's jumping in the portals when their season ends. Almost a third of the team or half of a college team, D2 and D1, jumps in the portal now, and so they have holes to fill. The good thing for our players is our guys have been seen in New England. They've been seen down in Florida at IMG's event. They've been seen in the Carolinas. They've been seen in Maryland. They've been seen in all the Elite Prep League stops in our league footprint in January and February. So, and then they get tons of exposure on the internet, and they get great film too. With almost 40 games. They do get great film, and so now people have heard of our players and obviously our program, and so now they're looking around the country and seeing who's available and seeing what they got to fill and first they got to find out who's leaving their program, and so it's just upside down, the way everything is with the portal and kids and pay for play now too. So we have some players that and we've had success too, so it's helped us. Last year, we had a really good team. We were 31-7 in 23-24, and was ranked as high as 4th in the country. Went to the national tournament, and our point guard, Jaden Johnson, is the starting point guard at Old Dominion this year, and hardly came off the court as a freshman. And then we had another freshman, went to Navy. We had a freshman at Montevallo and North Greenville doing very well, and then a freshman at IU Indy, Deshaun Good, 6'8". And Deshaun Good's got a great story because he came in 6'8", 205 with 2 D2 offers. When he left Fork Union, it was 6'8", 220, 3 D1 offers. And now he's 6'8", 230. And I don't know if he's going back to IU Indy, or if he's moving on, but
right.
He's got a great future. and a chance to make some money playing the game while he's in college, and just it's a different world now. And then we've also had some players like Carmelo Pacheco. Surprisingly, he didn't get Division I 2 years ago. Goes to UVA Wise, averages double figures and shoots 40-something% from three. The year later, everybody's blowing him up and wants him. He's got like 10 D1 offers, but no D1 offers 8 months earlier. And now he's the starting 2 guard at Mount St. Mary's, and they're having a heck of a season under Donnie Lynn, who's in his first year. And so it's pretty neat, though, to see the guys once they get into college. We told our team when we lost our last game last week, and we've got I got some really good assistants. Bobby Lake's a long-time high school coach in the DMV area, and he helps me out and does a great job. He's my recruiting coordinator, especially in the DMV. And Gary Hines is a legendary Fork Union guy. Played at Fork Union for Fletcher Arrett and played at Marshall, and he told the team after the last game that one of the great things for being a coach at Fork Union is to follow you guys now, follow your career and be fans of you guys. We enjoyed coaching you guys, and then now we will enjoy following your college careers and your lives, and we're here to assist you in any way you need assistance, and so that's been enjoyable and rewarding for me. Recruiting, we've been recruiting very hard for next year's team already, and we're also working very hard to get these guys placed and talking to college coaches all day long to try to get them to the next level. And on top of that, Mike, I'm the director of financial aid at Fork Union Military Academy. That's my other job. So this is a busy time. So it's been really busy lately, and they keep you busy at these military academies, that's for sure.
There's no doubt about that. And for sure that the way the recruiting and the way the landscape of college basketball has changed, everybody on both sides of the equation has had to adjust. College coaches obviously have had to make a huge adjustment in how they go about building their rosters, and guys like you at the prep school level and certainly high school coaches have had to adapt and adjust the way that they approach the recruiting with their players and trying to help those guys get an opportunity at the next level, because clearly the landscape is completely different from what it used to be. Before we get out, Bob, I want to give you a chance to share, how can people find out more about your program, connect with you, whether you want to share email, social media, website, whatever you feel comfortable with. And then after you do that, I'll jump back in and wrap things up.
Yeah. forkunion.com, our website, forkunion.com, to learn about our school. It's an outstanding website. It's an outstanding school. Boys military Christian boarding school for grades 7 through 12, and then plus postgrad sports and all the regular high school sports. And then I'm on X, the former Twitter. I think it's Coach Bob Will, at Coach Bob Will, and WILL. And I'm on there all the time. So anybody wants to reach me and send me a message and a follow, and love to help anybody out that I can in coaching or looking at players and helping players as well. But I appreciate you having me on here, Mike. I've enjoyed our conversation.
Really enjoyed it, Bob. I'm so appreciative that you took the time out of your schedule tonight to join us. And to everyone out there, thanks for listening, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks. Your first impression is everything when applying for a new coaching job. A professional coaching portfolio is the tool that highlights your coaching achievements and philosophies, and most of all, helps separate you and your abilities from the other applicants. The Coaching Portfolio Guide is an instructional, membership-based website that helps you develop a personalized portfolio. Each section of the Portfolio Guide provides detailed instructions on how to organize your portfolio in a professional manner. The guide also provides sample documents for each section of your portfolio that you can copy, modify, and add to your personal portfolio. As a Hoopheads Pod listener, you can get your Coaching Portfolio Guide for just $25. Visit coachingportfolioguide.com/hoopheads to learn more.
Thanks for listening to the Hoopheads podcast, presented by Head Start Basketball.